Chapter 170. To be able to become an inspector in the Guangzhou torture room. As long as they could hold this position for more than 10 years, they were basically not simple characters. Right now Chu Xiu had this kind of feeling. If he could predict that Wei Hanshan would be unlucky this time, then others would naturally be able to as well. Moreover, Jiang Taoran was a step faster. He must have made some kind of deal with Wei Jiuduan first, which allowed him to snatch the Qinzhou prefecture from Wei Hanshan's hands. When Chu Xiu and Wei Hanshan had a conflict, Jiang Taoran had pretended to be a peacemaker. In fact, he was just looking for an opportunity to profit from the conflict. Now he had finally found this opportunity. However, Chu Xiu didn't mind it too much, because he had never thought of expanding his forces at all. He had just arrived and became an inspector at the physical invulnerability realm. This was already eye-catching enough. If he had 2 prefectures under his command, then he would become the target of public criticism. Wei Hanshan knelt on the ground and looked gloomily at the smiling and harmless Jiang Taoran. He also looked at Chu Xiu, who was sitting at the side and looking like he was watching the show. Wei Hanshan was so angry that the roots of his teeth itched. Of course, he hated Wei Jiuduan even more in his heart. However, he did not dare to show this hatred. Wei Jiuduan snorted coldly and waved his hand. "All right, you can all leave. Remember, in the future, don't play any tricks." After saying this, Wei Jiuduan turned around and left. Chu Xiu looked at Wei Hanshan, who had just stood up with difficulty. He smiled faintly and said, "Lord Wei, I warned you before that you would soon be out of luck. Now it seems that it has really come true, right?" Wei Hanshan did not get angry at this moment. He only looked at Chu Xiu with a cold gaze. "Very good. Chu Xiu, I have underestimated you before. You are able to enter the Longhu leaderboard at such a young age and compete with the young elites of the large sections. You are indeed not a simple person, be it in terms of strength or tactics. I was reckless this round and I lost. But don't forget what I said before. This matter is definitely not over." After he finished speaking, Wei Hanshan coldly glanced at Chu Xiu, then gave Jiang Taoran a deep look before turning around to leave. Chu Xiu also followed him out of the door without a care. The remaining 4 inspectors exchanged glances with each other. Their eyes were filled with confusion. In the future, they wouldn't have to look at Chu Xiu the same way they used to look at him. Although he was young, his methods and strength weren't immature. Even Wei Hanshan was played around with by him. He already had the qualifications to be on equal footing with them. After returning to the Jianzhou Prefecture Inspector Hall, Chu Xiu immediately began to cultivate in seclusion with peace of mind. It wasn't until now that his troubles were truly resolved. He had secured the position of inspector. In the outside world, Wei Hanshan had suffered a great loss, so he probably wouldn't be in the mood to cause trouble for him for the time being. After stepping into the physical invulnerability realm, other than a period of seclusion in the dense forest of Shangmeng Mountain, Chu Xiu basically spent the rest of his time scheming against the group of people in the Guangzhou torture room. He didn't have much time to cultivate. There was a small bottleneck between the physical invulnerability realm and the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm. Not only did it require accumulation, but it also required enlightenment. One's essence, qi, and spirit had to be unified to reach the peak and condense the 3 flowers above the head. Only then could one truly be considered to have reached the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm. Although Chu Xiu's combat strength was very strong at the moment, and he could even fight with Wei Hanshan, who had already reached the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm, Chu Xiu actually hadn't reached the threshold of this realm. The reason he was able to fight with Wei Hanshan was entirely because of his strong foundation and amazing explosive power. In terms of realms, if they were to fight to the extreme, Chu Xiu's foundation was actually still inferior to Wei Hanshan's. After all, there was a difference of 1 realm between the 2, and it was a small realm like the 3 flowers at one's prominence, which could be considered a bottleneck. As for the Jiang clan's ancestor, who had been killed by Chu Xiu, he was on the brink of death and couldn't be taken out to be a battle achievement. Killing an old man on the brink of death wasn't something worth bragging about. A month later, in the middle of the night, while Chu Xiu was in seclusion in the inspector hall, a subtle movement suddenly came from the hall. This caused Chu Xiu, who was in seclusion, to suddenly open his eyes. He wasn't in seclusion for life and death. He was only accumulating his true qi and comprehending martial arts, so his perception was still there. When he heard that someone had sneaked into the inspector hall, Chu Xiu immediately frowned. It was true that the land of Guanzhong was a mix of good and bad people, but the Guanzhong torture room had absolute strength and prestige. Usually, some villains and thieves would avoid the Guanzhong torture room. At least, Chu Xiu had never heard of anyone daring to directly attack the Guanzhong torture room. Moreover, the strength of the Jianzhou Prefecture's inspector hall wasn't weak. There were dozens of constables guarding the place. Qin Feng and Lu Qingli weren't in the hall, but Du Guangzhong was. Now that this person was able to hide from the movements of so many people and sneak near him, it was obvious that he was not weak. Chu Xiu quietly pushed open the door of the seclusion room and quickly formed a seal with both hands. Formation formula, internal binding seal. Scamper the world, let me move freely. In an instant, Chu Xiu's speed exploded to the extreme. In an instant, he appeared in front of a black shadow. The red sleeve saber suddenly slashed out, and the biting cold blood refined divine gang fell with a ferocious crimson color. The speed was extremely fast. However, the black shadow's figure was even more elusive. Its speed was not much slower than Chu Xiu's internal binding seal. As the figure floated, it was like a willow leaf dancing in the wind, easily dodging Chu Xiu's saber. In an instant, more than 10 soul-chasing darts had appeared in front of Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu didn't even see how the person in front of him released the hidden weapons. The speed of the opponent's hidden weapons was not slower than Chu Xiu's azure dragon in the sleeve. Confrontation formula, Duga seal. In an instant, the earth energy around Chu Xiu condensed together, and he was as immovable as a mountain. When the soul-chasing darts hit Chu Xiu, they were directly blocked by his Duga seal. As for the black shadow, in a flash, he directly leaped onto the roof and left the inspector hall. Looking at the soul-chasing darts on the ground, Chu Xiu immediately frowned. He felt that the hidden weapons seemed a little familiar. At this moment, the fluctuations from the fight between the two attracted Du Guangzhong and the others. Seeing that someone actually dared to sneak into the inspector hall of the Guanzhong torture room, Du Guangzhong's expression suddenly changed, and he directly said coldly, "Sir, this thief is extremely audacious. I will immediately lead the people to chase after him." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Don't chase after him for now. I will go on my own. You guys just wait here." With that said, Chu Xiu's figure moved, and he directly leaped onto the roof and disappeared. Following the traces of the black shadow, Chu Xiu directly came to a small alley not far from the inspector hall. The black shadow twisted a little and took off his hood. He was actually wearing an extremely dark suit, and only his eyes were exposed. His figure simply seemed to have blended into the night. "Brother Chu, long time no see. Perhaps I should call you Inspector Official Chu now." The black shadow's face carried a trace of a faint lazy smile. It was actually the former Blue Dragon Society assassin, Tangya. At this moment, an old man walked out from the small alley. It was the Ghostly Hand King. The Ghostly Hand King looked at Chu Xiu and said with a sigh, "As expected, people with ability don't have to worry about food and drink no matter where they go. In the Blue Dragon Society branch, you were a gold medal assassin, and now that you're in the Guanzhong torture room, you can actually sit in your inspector position so quickly." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. When he made his move before, he could roughly guess that the black shadow was Tangya. The other party's attainments in hidden weapons were very high. This was something Chu Xiu had already seen in the Blue Dragon Society, so he felt that the other party was a bit familiar. Seeing an old friend again, Chu Xiu said in a light voice, "The Heavenly Sin branch leader is quite persistent. He even chased me all the way to the Guanzhong torture room. But I don't believe that the Heavenly Sin branch leader would dare make a move in the Guanzhong torture room. This isn't the Northern Yan or West Chu. The Guanzhong torture room is the only place in the Guanzhong Pass. The Blue Dragon Society doesn't even have a branch here." The Ghostly Hand King shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Don't mention the Blue Dragon Society. I'm no longer a member of the Blue Dragon Society, so the Heavenly Sin branch leader probably doesn't have the time to chase you right now." Chu Xiu slightly knit his brows. He thought that the Heavenly Sin Branch leader had chased him all the way to the Guanzhong torture room, and that Tanya was like last time, purposely leaking some information to warn him. Who would have thought that the ghostly Hand King would say something like this? "Oh, what's going on?" Chu Xiu asked. The ghostly Hand King didn't directly answer Chu Xiu. Instead, he said to the alley behind him, "All right, come out." As the ghostly Hand King's voice fell, more than 30 people walked out from the depths of the alley. Among them were the Cruel Sword, Yan Bugui, the Fire Slave, and the Wolf King that Chu Xiu was familiar with. The rest were the Xiantian realm assassins of the Heavenly Sin Branch. However, at this time, they weren't wearing the clothes of the Blue Dragon Society, nor were they wearing the bamboo hats and masks of the Blue Dragon Society. The ghostly Hand King said to Chu Xiu, "As you can see, we are no longer members of the Blue Dragon Society. This is a long story, and I have to start from the time when the Heavenly Sin Branch leader failed to kill you. Back then, you lured the people of the White Tiger Hall to attack the Heavenly Sin Branch leader. The martial artists of the White Tiger Hall were very strong, and the Heavenly Sin Branch leader's foundation was even weaker than the other party. However, the brood of the White Tiger Hall was too confident, and the Heavenly Sin Branch leader used a strange treasure to ambush him. He was heavily injured, and in the end, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader was able to kill him. That brood of the White Tiger Hall was a branch leader under the White Tiger Hall, and his status was the same as the Heavenly Sin Branch leaders. As an old enemy, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader killed a branch leader of the White Tiger Hall, which was a great merit. Relying on this merit, the Heavenly Sin Branch leader actually obtained the opportunity to return to the Blue Dragon Society headquarters. Of course, only the Heavenly Sin Branch leader has the qualifications to return to the headquarters. We naturally don't have the qualifications. At this point, the corners of the Ghost Hand King's mouth revealed a trace of incomprehension. When the Heavenly Sin Branch leader left, he only took one person with him as a trusted aide. That person was the Azure Lightning Sword, Chen Jiao. Chapter 171. Chu Xiu was rather astonished that the Heavenly Sin Branch Lord was able to kill the Branch Lord of the White Tiger Hall. According to Chu Xiu's expectations, both sides should have been heavily injured, or the Heavenly Sin Branch leader would have retreated. He didn't expect that the Heavenly Sin Branch leader, who was at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation, would be able to kill the White Tiger Branch leader. Judging from the Ghost Hand King's tone, he seemed to be disdainful of the Heavenly Sin Branch leader's decision to bring Chen Jiao to the headquarters. However, Chu Xiu felt that it was normal. There were many capable people in the Heavenly Sin Branch leader. The Heavenly Sin Branch leader could casually pick someone to be his confidant, and they would all be stronger than Chen Jiao, who was good at bootlicking. However, although these people were strong, they really weren't suitable to be confidants. Yin Bugui was cold and unsociable, and Tanya's personality was hard to fathom. Moreover, when the Heavenly Sin Branch leader wanted to find someone to attract attention as a chess piece, he chose Chu Xiu and Tanya. Although the Heavenly Sin Branch leader chose Chu Xiu in the end, he also listed Tanya as one of his targets. Tanya's heart was probably already cracked. As for the Ghost Hand King and the others, they were either too slippery or not strong enough. So Chen Jiao was really a good choice. Of course, Chen Jiao was also good at bootlicking. Chu Xiu looked at the Ghost Hand King and the others and frowned. If the Heavenly Sin Branch leader went to the headquarters, then he went to the headquarters. Why did you guys leave the Blue Dragon Society? There's only one Heavenly Sin Branch in East Yen. Although the Heavenly Sin Branch leader is a little weak, he still managed to set up the framework of the Heavenly Sin Branch. The Blue Dragon Society wouldn't cripple the Heavenly Sin Branch just because they lost the Heavenly Sin Branch leader, right? The Ghost Hand King smiled bitterly. Of course the Blue Dragon Society wouldn't cripple the Heavenly Sin Branch. Instead, the new branch leader brought a lot of killers with him, completely filling up the Heavenly Sin Branch. However, you should know the principle of a new ruler having a new set of officials. We are all veterans of the Sin Branch, and we are at a disadvantage in terms of numbers and strength. Without any backing, we will naturally be ostracized. You've seen the atmosphere when we were in the Heavenly Sin Division. There was almost no competition for missions. But now, even Tanya and Yen Bugui can't get a single mission for a month. Under such circumstances, what's the point of us staying in the Heavenly Sin branch? Even if we transfer to another branch, the situation will probably be the same. That's why I discussed it with Tanya and the others and decided to leave the Blue Dragon Society. These are the only brothers who are willing to leave with us. Chushio suddenly asked. The price of leaving the Blue Dragon Society isn't low, right? The Blue Dragon Society was not a charity, but an assassin organization. It was easy to join, but hard to leave. For some other martial arts sects, if they wanted to leave the sect, they would either become abandoned disciples who were chased, or they would return their cultivation to the sect. It was rare to find someone who could leave the sect in one piece. This was the case for normal martial arts sects, not to mention the Azure Dragon Society, which was evil. The Ghost Hand King was silent for a moment before saying, "We are not considered important members of the Blue Dragon Society. Moreover, the new branch leader doesn't like us and wants to kick us out, so he didn't make things too difficult for us." But even so, we all took the initiative to swallow the goo worms and swore a heart demon oath not to reveal any information or secrets about the Blue Dragon Society. Furthermore, we had to fork out almost a third of our mission rewards over the years before the branch allowed us to leave safely. Hearing the Ghost Hand King say this, Chushio was a little surprised. The price they paid was really not small. Not to mention 1/3 of all the mission rewards, the Ghost Hand King and the others had to bleed a lot. Also, the goo worms were strange existences from Miaojiang. After making a heart demon oath, as long as one violated the oath, the goo worms would devour their heart and kill them. It was very vicious. Unless the person who swallowed the goo worms could cultivate to the second realm of the 3 realms of spirit focus, the realm of true fire refinement, and use the true martial pill to evolve the true fire in their body, only then could they completely burn the goo worms. Then why did you come to find me this time? Chushio seemed to have faintly guessed the reason why the Ghost Hand King and the others came to find him. Hearing Chushio's question, the Ghost Hand King's expression turned serious, and he said, "We joined the Blue Dragon Society for many years. Now that we have left the Blue Dragon Society, we don't want to go to the underworld to mess around. We assassins from the Blue Dragon Society are absolutely top-notch when it comes to killing people. However, because we have to carry out missions all year round, we don't have much time to cultivate in seclusion, so our cultivation speed is a bit slow. This time, after leaving the Blue Dragon Society, all we want is a stable place to stay. Official Chu, you and we are old friends. In the past, even if we participated in the pursuit of you, it was because we had no other choice. We can also see Division Leader Heavenly Sin's character. To be honest, this time we actually came to seek shelter from you. We don't have the ability Official Chu. You can directly join the Guanzhong torture room and become patrol agents, so as long as you give us the status of some ordinary constable or bailiff, we will be satisfied. We are all acquaintances. I believe Official Chu understands our strength. We don't dare to say that we are stronger than the warriors from the Guanzhong torture room, but at least we won't be a burden to you." This was a decision that the Ghost Hand King and the others made after thinking for a long time after leaving the Blue Dragon Society. They were all elite assassins of the Blue Dragon Society. To be a bit arrogant, the Ghost Hand King and the others were a bit proud. After being assassins for so many years, they couldn't say that they were the best among warriors of the same rank, but at least there were few who could match them. Therefore, after leaving the Blue Dragon Society, they thought of many places to go, but either they didn't like people, or people didn't like them because of their background. As for going their separate ways and becoming rogue warriors in the pugilistic world, they weren't willing to do so casually. At this time, they occasionally heard some traveling merchants talking about the tragedy of the Jiang family in the Guangxi Jianzhou prefecture being annihilated. They were all condemning the new patrol agent Chushio for his ruthlessness and tyranny, saying that the Jianzhou prefecture would have a hard time in the future, and so on. When the Ghost Hand King and the others heard this, they immediately went to ask around and found out that the new patrol agent Chushio they were talking about was actually their former colleague from the Blue Dragon Society. When they first heard this news, the Ghost Hand King and the others couldn't help but be stunned. Even now, they still couldn't figure out Chushio's identity. This guy went from an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society to a member of the Dragon Riders Imperial Army of Eastern Qi. The Ghost Hand King and the others thought that he had returned to Eastern Qi, but in the blink of an eye, he became the patrol agent of the Guanzhong torture room. What was going on? However, after understanding the power and status of the patrol agent, the Ghost Hand King had an idea, and that was to rely on Chu Xiu and join the Guanzhong torture room. This wasn't a whim of the Ghost Hand King, but a decision he made after thinking about it for a long time. If Chu Xiu was able to become a patrol agent in the Guanzhong Pass, it was naturally not a big deal for them, assassins from the Blue Dragon Society. Moreover, in terms of influence, the Guanzhong torture room was stronger than the Blue Dragon Society, so joining the Guanzhong torture room wasn't a disgrace to them. Most importantly, there was an acquaintance, Chu Xiu, in the Guanzhong torture room. When they were in the Blue Dragon Society, they had worked with Chu Xiu for a long time, so they understood Chu Xiu's character. His ability and strength were impeccable. Most importantly, Chu Xiu wasn't an extremely egoistic person like the Heavenly Sin Division leader. He could accept others, and joining Chu Xiu's service was better than following a superior like the Heavenly Sin Division leader. Therefore, when the Ghost Hand King told the others about this matter, it was immediately approved by most of them. For the Ghost Hand King, who was in the inner invulnerability realm, Chu Xiu's ability and strength were stronger than theirs. They had a clear understanding of this in the Blue Dragon Society. Even assassins like Fire Slave and Wolf King would follow Chu Xiu when they carried out their missions. Therefore, they didn't have any psychological burden or dissatisfaction when they became Chu Xiu's subordinates from colleagues. The ones who had some problems were Tangya and Yen Bugui. They were both in the physical invulnerability realm like Chu Xiu, and they were on the same level in the Blue Dragon Society. They were all 5th-level assassins. Would they be willing to be Chu Xiu's subordinates now? However, after the Ghost Hand King and the others agreed, Tangya and Yen Bugui didn't have any objections after thinking about it. They also agreed with the Ghost Hand King's suggestion. Yen Bugui's thinking was very simple. As long as he could kill people, he would be given cultivation resources. It didn't matter where he was. As for Tangya, even the Ghost Hand King couldn't guess what he was thinking. The Ghost Hand King solemnly cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu, to put it bluntly, this time we are here to seek refuge with you. If you agree, we will work together again and respect you as our master. If you don't agree, we won't continue to pester you because of our past relationship. We won't talk about the things you did in the Blue Dragon Society. The choice is in Official Chu's hands." The Ghost Hand King was a very tactful person. In the past, when he was in the Blue Dragon Society, he would call Chu Xiu by his name. Now that he had decided to seek refuge with Chu Xiu, he naturally had to correct his position. Addressing him as Lord already proved Ghost Hand King's current position and thoughts. Looking at these people from the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiu revealed a smile. He cupped his hands and said, "Since everyone thinks highly of me, Chu Xiu, and traveled thousands of miles to join me, I, Chu Xiu, naturally won't be unreasonable. In the past, we worked together in the Blue Dragon Society. You all know my personality and way of doing things. If you don't betray me, I won't betray you either. What you can obtain under me will definitely be more than what you obtained in the Blue Dragon Society." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, the Ghost Hand King and the others bowed in unison and said, "Greetings, Official Chu." At this time, even the eccentric and cold Yen Bugui cupped his hands. He didn't say anything, but this was enough to show his attitude. Chapter 172. The Ghost Hand King and the others had left the Blue Dragon Society and came to seek refuge with him. This was definitely a pleasant surprise for Chu Xiu. The Ghost Hand King and the others wanted to find a new place to settle down. Didn't Chu Xiu also need a group of powerful and reliable subordinates? To be honest, the people under Chu Xiu's current subordinates were just passable in terms of strength and reliability. Lu Qingli and Qin Feng's strength was barely passable, but they were both veterans in the Guanzhong torture room. They were rather slippery and liked to leave some leeway when doing things. Du Guangzhong was a bit better, but he was a bit inflexible and couldn't accomplish great things. The most important thing was that the three of them were threatened by Chu Xiu to join his subordinates. It was inevitable that they would have other thoughts in their hearts. Perhaps when Chu Xiu displayed absolute strength or when his own forces became stronger, these people would truly pledge their loyalty to Chu Xiu. But now, Chu Xiu didn't think that they would be of one mind with him. Moreover, Chu Xiu wasn't too satisfied with the strength of the other constables and bailiffs. Perhaps because he was used to dealing with the killers of the Blue Dragon Society. In Chu Xiu's mind, only the killers of the Blue Dragon Society could be considered as the true elites. The constables of the Guanzhong torture room were best at solving cases and deducing the information of the killers based on various traces. In terms of pure killing methods, they weren't as good as the killers of the Blue Dragon Society. The arrival of the Ghost Hand King and the others could be considered to have completely made up for the combat strength of Chu Xiu's subordinates. It could actually make the strength of Chu Xiu's subordinates skyrocket. Chu Xiu said to the Ghost Hand King and the others, "Find a place to stay today. Tomorrow morning, I'll send someone to pick you up and officially let you join the Guanzhong torture room." The strength of the Ghost Hand King and the others were in the innate, inner, and physical invulnerability realms. The positions that Chu Xiu could give them were only ordinary constables and bailiffs. Therefore, he had the right to appoint them without even needing Wei Juduan's consent. Tomorrow, he just needed to introduce the Ghost Hand King and the others to the Jianzhou Inspector Hall, register their identities, and send them to the Guanxi Torture Hall for records and backup. In the end, Chu Xiu added, "All of you are considered to be newcomers. After you join the Jian Province's Inspector Hall tomorrow, it will be very easy for you to encounter some problems. When the time comes, you might need to display your strength." The Ghost Hand King smiled. "We know the rules. Not only in the Guanzhong torture room, but also in Jianzhou Inspector Master, who would take you seriously if you were new here and had no strength." This kind of thing happened to Chu Xiu when he first joined the Blue Dragon Society. Now it was their turn. On the morning of the second day, the entire patrol hall was discussing the matter of someone sneaking into the hall that night. However, before they could discuss further, Du Guangzhong and the others received news that a few of the pugilistic world's constables were to make a trip to the meeting hall. Chu Xiu had something to tell them. When Du Guangzhong and the others arrived at the conference hall, they were surprised to find that there were already 5 people sitting in the conference hall. There were both inner and physical invulnerability experts. Chu Xiu introduced, "These are my good friends from the Blue Dragon Society. Because of the internal strife of the Blue Dragon Society, they chose to leave the Blue Dragon Society. Now that they have nowhere to go, they are also preparing to join the Guanzhong torture room and appoint them as constables of the Jianzhou Inspector Hall. There are also more than 30 other people who will also join the Jianzhou Inspector Hall." Chu Xiu pointed at Du Guangzhong and the other 2 and said, "These 3 are the veteran constables of the Jianzhou Inspector Hall. Du Guangzhong, Lu Qingli, and Qin Fang. We will be colleagues from now on. Now that we know each other, it will be easier for us to cooperate in the future." As soon as Chu Xiu said this, Du Guangzhong and the other 2 showed vigilance and resistance in their eyes. It was a good thing that the Jianzhou Inspector Hall became more powerful, but the sudden appearance of so many experts was not necessarily a good thing for them. Currently, they were in charge of most of the matters of the Jianzhou Inspector Hall, but now that so many people suddenly appeared, would they seize their authority? They naturally could not stop Chu Xiu from appointing anyone as constables of the Jianzhou Inspector Hall, but it did not mean that they would not express their opinions on this matter. Smiling, Lu Qingli said, "Since you're all friends of Exalted Chu, and you're all from the Azure Dragon Society, I'm sure you're all very strong. With your addition, the power of the Jianzhou Inspector Hall will definitely increase greatly. This cup of tea is for you all, and I hope that you will take care of me in the future." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Qingli suddenly swung his hand and made a gesture of offering tea. However, the earth energy in his body suddenly exploded in his hands, and the teacup directly flew out of his hand, blasting towards the Ghost Hand King and the others. As the teacup approached, the lid suddenly opened, and the tea wrapped in earth energy shot towards the Ghost Hand King and the others like a sharp arrow. Tanya took a step forward and waved with one hand. The speed was so fast that one could not even see the trajectory, but wisps of earth energy wrapped around the tea without leaving a trace, like a net, and sent the tea back into the teacup. Tanya took the teacup with ease and took a sip of tea, then said with a smile, "Thank you, Lord Lu. Actually, we should be the ones who need to take care of you." Seeing Tanya's casual action, Lu Qingli's expression suddenly became solemn. In front of Chu Xiao, he did not dare to go too far, so just now he was just testing the other party. He wanted to let the tea splash on the other party and make him look a little embarrassed. However, who would have thought that the other party would show such control of earth energy that even he was shocked. Although this degree of control of earth energy did not represent one's own strength, it also proved that the person in front of him was absolutely extraordinary. And at this time, Yanbu Gui, who had been silent all this time, took off the huge sword on his back and casually placed it on the ground. This seemingly casual placing of the sword caused the ground to shake, as if there was an earthquake, but there was not the slightest crack on the ground. This move caused the expressions of Du Guangzhong and the others to change slightly. This move was even more direct than the control of earth energy that Tanya had shown just now. What Yanbu Gui had shown was the control of strength. It was easy to lift something heavy as if it was light, but it was difficult to lift something light as if it was heavy. Yanbu Gui's control of strength had already reached the point where he could control the weight of his strength freely. He could cause the earth to shake without damaging the ground. Now, if his sword were to slash at a piece of tofu, the tofu would not be damaged in the slightest, and the stone slabs or even iron slabs would shatter the tofu. Lu Qingli and the others looked at each other and did not say anything. At this point, there was no longer a need to probe. As expected of an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society, not to mention anything else, his strength was indeed the best among warriors of the same level, and this also gave them some pressure. In the past, they were the only ones under Chu Xiao. Although it could not be said that they were slacking, at least they did not feel any pressure, because other than them, Chu Xiao also had no one else he could use. But now these people from the Blue Dragon Society had come, and they were even old acquaintances of Chu Xiao. They were no longer the only ones. Looking at the people on both sides below, Chu Xiao did not directly state his position. It was good for his subordinates to have disagreements and competition, but it was taboo to be in harmony or a pool of stagnant water. Of course, he would not be as stupid as the Heaven Sin branch leader, who would deliberately provoke his subordinates and deliberately divide them. That was purely looking for death. Looking at the people below, Chu Xiao said in a deep voice, "All right, stop probing each other. Because the Ghost Hand King and the others have just arrived, they will not directly manage the affairs of the patrol hall. They are not familiar with it, and they do not understand it. Therefore, I will be in charge of it for the time being." Hearing Chu Xiao's words, Du Guangzhong and the others let out a long sigh of relief. However, Chu Xiao continued, "It is just that the people under me, Chu Xiao, do not look at qualifications, only strength. Right now, the power of my Jianzhou Prefecture's patrol hall has greatly increased, and the demand has also greatly increased. It is time to do something. Whether it is the cultivation resources or the power in my hands, I will not directly give them to you. Instead, you will have to fight for them yourselves. Whoever has the ability will be promoted. It is simple, direct, and fair. Isn't that right?" Du Guangzhong and the others immediately stood up and cupped their hands, saying, "Yes, sir." As long as Chu Xiao did not show favoritism and directly competed with the people of the Blue Dragon Society, they were not afraid. The killers of the Blue Dragon Society were indeed the elites of the elites, but the martial artists of the Guanzhong torture room were not bad either. Moreover, this was the Guanzhong torture room. These people from the Blue Dragon Society had just arrived, so they were definitely not as familiar with the place. In this place, killing people was not the only thing that could solve everything. Chu Xiao said in a deep voice, "Old Du, bring some people to the Jianzhou Prefecture, and send invitations to all the local martial arts forces. 3 days later at noon, I will invite them to a banquet in the Jianzhou Prefecture's Phoenix Cry restaurant. Let the masters of each force come in person. Of course, it is fine if they do not come, but let them imagine the consequences themselves." Du Guangzhong and the others nodded when they heard this. They had already expected this. The Jianzhou Prefecture's Inspector Hall had already established its prestige in the Jianzhou Prefecture, and this prestige was built on the premise that the Jiang family was exterminated. Normally, After the Jiang family was exterminated, these local martial arts forces should have come to visit the Jianzhou prefecture. However, because Chu Xiu was a little too aggressive in the Jiang family's extermination, these sects and aristocratic families were a little conflicted, so they did not come. Since they did not come, Chu Xiu could only take the initiative to take action. Right now, Chu Xiu had already been in seclusion for a month. He seemed to be very low-key, but in fact, he was just sharpening his knife. Now the blade had been sharpened to a very sharp point. Moreover, he had managed to catch up with Ghost Hand King and the others who had come to seek shelter. This was a pleasant surprise for Chu Xiu. The strength of his subordinates had skyrocketed, and it was time to use the blade. Following Chu Xiu's order, Du Guangzhong immediately asked his constables to send the news to the major sects and aristocratic families. However, after these sects and aristocratic families received the news, they did not immediately decide whether to go or not. Instead, they first gathered together and secretly contacted each other to gather information. Chapter 173. There were more than 10 small cities in Jianzhou Prefecture, and there were dozens of martial arts forces among them. However, those that could stand on the stage had at least a physical invulnerability realm martial artist in charge. There were about 12 or 3 such martial arts forces, and their strength was not too weak. In the past, the Guanzhong torture room was weak, but it did not mean that the local martial arts forces in Jianzhou Prefecture were weak. The Jiang family was one of the top martial forces in Jianzhou Prefecture, but they were destroyed by Chu Xiu without hesitation some time ago. This made the other martial arts forces in Jianzhou Prefecture angry, but also a little afraid. They could not help but recall some memories hidden in the bottom of their hearts. In the past, when Guan Xiyu had just taken over the Guanzhong torture room, outsiders said that he was impartial and merciless. He even crippled and killed his own disciples. However, it was important to note that this was only how Guan Xiyu treated his own people. He was already so harsh to his own people, so how could he show mercy to outsiders? In the past, when Guan Xiyu had just taken over the Guanzhong Punishment Hall, she had killed many people and destroyed many sects in order to stabilize the order of the Guanzhong Punishment Hall. She only stopped when everyone was killed to the point that they no longer dared to violate the rules of the Guanzhong Punishment Hall. Chu Xiu's cruel methods of doing things were somewhat similar to Guan Xiyu's in the past. In the Luo family of Luoqing, the heads of the 12 major forces in Jianzhou Prefecture were all gathered here. The Luo family was a big family of the same level as the Jiang family in the past. The Jiang family was known as Jiang Banqing in Qi City, and the Luo family was in Luoqing. Even Luoqing was built because of the existence of the Luo family. At this time, in a secret room in the Luo family, people from the 12 major forces in Jianzhou Prefecture were all present. The Luo family's great ancestor also had the cultivation of the three-flower realm. Although he looked old, he was not as old as the Jiang family's great ancestor. The power of the Luo family was also in the hands of the Luo family's great ancestor. At this time, there were 12 people in the meeting hall. In the end, these 12 people were either sitting there with their eyes fixed on their noses and mouths, not saying a word, or they were drinking tea as if the Luo family's tea was some kind of delicacy. The Luo family patriarch wore a black brocade robe with cloud patterns. Although his hair was a little white, it was neat and tidy. Seeing everyone's reaction, the Luo family's ancestor couldn't help but frown. I say everyone, it was you who suggested to find a place to discuss this matter. In the end, my Luo family has provided such an opportunity and a place, but in the end, none of you said anything. What is the meaning of this? When they heard the Luo clan's ancestor, all of them started to discuss in low voices. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man who was dressed like a scholar stood up and cupped his hands. Everyone, all of you've seen Chu Xiu's way of doing things. He's vicious, merciless, and doesn't give anyone any face. He's completely ruthless and doesn't care about rules or reason at all. Not to mention the Jiang clan, we have also done such a thing. Everyone, don't be in a hurry to shirk responsibility. Who dares to say that none of you have violated the rules of the Guanzhong torture hall? If Chu Xiu treats the Jiang family like this, then there's no need to mention how he treats us. Therefore, this time, when Chu Xiu invited us to the banquet, It's most likely not a good banquet. The scholar who spoke was the sect leader of the Jianzhou Prefecture's Divine Feathers sect, Soaring Feather Falcon, Cheng Gongtai. He was most proficient in speed-type movement techniques, and had a cultivation of the physical invulnerability realm. Hearing Cheng Gongtai's words, a rough-looking man dressed in black scratched his head and said, "Old Cheng's words make sense. This Chu Xiu doesn't have any good intentions at all. Look at the time he invited us to the banquet. It's exactly noon. Who would choose such an inauspicious time to invite us? What is he trying to do? Execute us at noon?" This black-robed man, Do Weihu, was the hall leader of the Haiyan Hall in the Jianzhou Prefecture. He was born in the wilderness and eventually established the Haiyan Hall. His history was short, only slightly more than 10 years. However, he was very strong. Although he was only at the physical invulnerability realm, his physical cultivation was extremely terrifying. After hearing Do Weihu's words, someone else chimed in, "That's right. After this Chu Xiu annihilated the Jiang family, he didn't wait for us to pay our respects. This time, he's probably going to take action personally. When that time comes, we don't even know whether we'll be greeted with swords or wine." Following these two people's words, the crowd began to discuss again. It was much livelier than before. However, this time, the crowd seemed more like they were chatting and bragging. After talking for a long time, no one could come up with a concrete plan. Looking at this chaotic scene, the Luo family patriarch shouted in a low voice, "All of you shut up." Everyone gathered together to come up with ideas, not to chat. Right now, all the sects in the Jianzhou Prefecture are under the pressure of Lord Chu Xiu. This time, what kind of attitude should we use to face Lord Chu Xiu? In fact, should we go or not go? Everyone, please come up with a plan. Everyone looked at each other, then at each other, but no one said a word. In the end, Do Weihu from the Haiyan Hall sneered and said, "You guys are too cowardly. What's there to discuss about this? Since the other party is planning a hangmen banquet, why don't we just not go? No matter how domineering Chu Xiu is, he can't attack us just because we don't go to the banquet. It's true that a martial arts faction can't stop the Jianzhou Prefecture's Inspector Hall. However, what if all the martial arts factions in the Jianzhou Prefecture unite together? I don't believe that Chu Xiu would dare to force us all to rebel." The people from the martial arts factions all nodded. What Do Weihu said made sense. Guanzhong was not the chaotic land of the past. Now there were still rules. Chu Xiu could be domineering, but he could not run amok. If he dared to force all the martial arts factions in the Jianzhou Prefecture to rebel, this matter would definitely alarm the headquarters. At that time, Chu Xiu would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. This matter was no longer something that Wei Jiuduan could suppress. However, after discussing for a long time, they still could not come to a conclusion. In the end, they could not even come to a conclusion on whether they should accept Chu Xiu's invitation to attend the banquet 3 days later. In the end, everyone could only leave with their own thoughts. After everyone left, the Luo family patriarch rubbed his eyebrows tiredly. A few martial artists from the core generation of the Luo family walked out. One of them asked, "Patriarch, have you come to a conclusion?" The Luo family patriarch snorted coldly when he heard that and said, "Come to a fart." Even at this point, this bunch of idiots still have their own plans. Everyone has their own schemes in their hearts. Without a knife to their necks, it's impossible to join forces. If my Luo family really joins forces with this bunch of idiots, I'm afraid we'll die even faster. Then, are we going out on Chu Xiu's invitation this time? The martial artist asked. The Luo family patriarch said indifferently, "Of course we're going. Why not? The shot shoots the bird that sticks out. The Jiang family has already taken care of this bird that sticks out. My Luo family naturally can't be the second. Let's see. When the time comes, we just need to see this Chu Xiu's attitude and act according to the crowd." In the past, the Jiang family hooked up with Wei Jiuduan and developed their business and family strength wantonly. They even faintly had the reputation of being the #1 family in the Jianzhou Prefecture. Back then, you were still envious and prepared to learn from the Jiang family. In the end, what about now? Do you still want to learn from the Jiang family? Remember, it's not that easy to be first, and it's the same for the second. So, our Luo family doesn't seek to be first or second. We just want to be third or fourth. That way we can live longer. The martial artists of the Luo family all nodded. At the moment, the power of the Luo family was still in the hands of the Luo family patriarch. As long as the patriarch said something, regardless of whether they understood it or not, they just needed to remember it. 3 days later, in the Phoenix restaurant, Chu Xiu directly booked the largest restaurant in the Jianzhou city, the Phoenix restaurant. The banquet was held on the 6th floor of the Phoenix restaurant. The Guangzhou area was located in the center of the 3 countries, so the food also had the style of the 3 countries. As the inspector of the Jianzhou prefecture, Chu Xiu also had the backing of a small local force in the Jianzhou city. This time, in order to please Chu Xiu, they also put in a lot of effort, and put in all kinds of delicacies. Chu Xiu had arrived at the main seat a long time ago. There were 12 seats below him. It was not even noon yet, but people from various martial arts factions had arrived one after another. Those who arrived first were the weaker martial arts forces. They didn't think too much about it, purely because they didn't want to offend Chu Xiu. The Luo family patriarch was the 4th to enter. Although he had the cultivation of the 3-flower realm at one's prominence, he still took the initiative to greet Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu is indeed worthy of being a young talent on the Longhu list. As expected, you are outstanding, young and promising." The Luo family patriarch was old friends with the Jiang family patriarch in the past. They had worked together and fought each other, so he had a good understanding of the Jiang family patriarch's strength. Now he was so polite to Chu Xiu not only because of Chu Xiu's status, but also because Chu Xiu had the strength to kill the Jiang family patriarch. Based on this alone, they were on equal footing. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Old Master Luo, you're too polite. You're a senior in the martial arts world, so please take care of me in the future." The Luo family patriarch chuckled and said, Sure. I believe that the Jianzhou prefecture will be even more glorious under the leadership of official Chu in the future." As the two of them pretentiously flattered each other, many people from other martial arts forces also arrived one after another. Cheng Gongtai of the Divine Feather sect, who previously said that Chu Xiu was up to no good, came, and so did Do Weihu of the Haiyan Hall. Seeing Do Weihu walk in, the rest of the people cursed in their hearts. This boar looked rough, but in reality, he was the most scheming. Back when they were at the Luo family patriarch, Do Weihu said that Chu Xiu's banquet was a trap, and that he wouldn't come. In the end, didn't he come obediently? If there was really an idiot who listened to Do Weihu and didn't come, then that person would really stand out. At that time, he would probably become Chu Xiu's primary target. Chapter 174. There were a total of 12 martial arts factions that were invited by Chu Xiu. They were pretty much all the martial arts factions in the entire Jianzhou prefecture. However, at this time, the 12 seats were not filled. One person did not come. Everyone present had a strange expression on their faces. The person who did not come was from the Gao family of Wen City. He was not considered strong, and could only be ranked last among the martial arts factions in the Jianzhou prefecture. They did not expect that the Gao family would be so unyielding. Faced with Chu Xiu's invitation, he actually did not come. Chu Xiu's expression did not change in the slightest. After noon, when the person still did not arrive, Chu Xiu said directly, "Remove the seat." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, a small constable immediately walked over and removed the seat. Looking at everyone present, Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Since I took over the Jianzhou Prefecture Inspector Hall, this is the first time I have met all of you face to face. Therefore, I would like to propose a toast to all of you." Just as Chu Xiu picked up his wine cup, a middle-aged martial artist wearing a blue brocade robe suddenly walked in from outside. He had physical invulnerability realm cultivation. The moment he came in, he smiled and said, "My apologies, Official Chu. Maiwan City is a little far from Jianzhou City, so I am late. Please forgive me, Official Chu." Chu Xiu put down his cup and sized up the Gao family master. He said calmly, "Late? All right then, find a place to sit." The Gao family master hurriedly wanted to take a seat, but he was shocked to find that there was no seat for him at the table. He could not help but smile awkwardly and said, Official Chu, there is no seat left. Chu Xiu's expression instantly darkened. He said coldly, since you know there is no seat for you, then why are you still not getting out? The Gao family master's expression changed. Official Chu, what do you mean by this? I only came a little late. Are you not going to give me face? You're even more arrogant than Lord Disciplinary Officer. Chu Xiu said coldly, I don't like people who are late. I've already given you enough face by personally inviting you to the banquet. Now that you're late, you've thrown away this face yourself. You can't even come to my banquet late, which proves that you don't take me, Chu Xiu, seriously. I give you face, but you don't want a seat? Get out of here. Chu Xiu's words made the face of the Gao family's patriarch flush red. No matter what, he was still the head of a family, and was ranked among the many martial arts forces in Jianzhou Prefecture. But now he was humiliated by Chu Xiu in front of everyone. How could he get out of this embarrassing situation? Therefore, the Gao family had pointed at Chu Xiu and shouted, Chu Xiu, don't go too far. You should know. However, before he could finish speaking, Chu Xiu's figure moved, and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of the Gao family's patriarch. His hand formed a fist seal, the army formula, the Great Vajra seal. Slaying evil and subduing demons, unstoppable. Golden Gangqi shone in the meeting hall. No one present expected Chu Xiu to suddenly make a move. Even the Gao family head himself did not expect it. When this incomparably majestic seal appeared in front of him, the Gao family head struck out with his palm. Gangqi erupted, wanting to block it. Although Chu Xiu had not reached the peak of the physical invulnerability realm, his strength was already enough to crush martial artists of the same level. Among martial artists of the same level, only the direct disciples of a powerhouse like Yuqi or Tangya, who was also from the Blue Dragon Society and had extremely strong combat strength, could fight him. However, the Gao family head in front of him had obviously not reached this level. His strength was even inferior to Du Guangzhong and other Jianghu detectives. The power of the fast and slow 9 words formula was extremely powerful. As the fiercest and most overbearing style of the 9 words formula, the Great Vajra seal was not something that the Gao family head could easily resist. When Chu Xiu's seal fell, the golden Gangqi exploded in an instant, enveloping the Gao family head. After a fierce explosion of Gangqi, everyone could clearly hear the sound of bones cracking. The Gao family head's arms were twisted like fried dough twists. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and was directly sent flying. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Seeing Chu Xiu's move, everyone present immediately held their breath and did not make a sound. Even the great ancestor of the Luo family, and the other 2 martial artists of the 3-flower realm at once prominence did not speak. They had long since heard of Chu Xiu's battle prowess. However, now that they had seen Chu Xiu cripple a cultivator of the same cultivation level as him with a single move and beat him to the point where it was unknown whether he was dead or alive, such terrifying battle prowess still shocked them. Moreover, this time, it was the Gao family head who had a death wish. No one could say anything about Chu Xiu teaching him a lesson, so naturally, no one stood up for him. Wen City was far from the Jianzhou Prefecture, but it was not so far that it would take 3 days to get there. Not to mention riding a horse, they could walk there. The Gao family head might have really planned not to come, but they were still worried. So they arrived in Jianzhou City in advance and waited at the entrance of the restaurant, wanting to see who was not coming. If an expert like the great ancestor of the Luo family did not come, then he would directly leave. Therefore, the Gao family head had been waiting at the entrance the whole time. At the end of the wait, he realized that everyone had already arrived. It turned out that his action was not because he was clever, but because he was really stupid. Thinking of this, the Gao family had hurriedly wanted to come in, but it was already too late. Chu Xiu had directly removed him from his position. There was only one chance, and Chu Xiu would only give face once. The Gao family head did not grasp the opportunity, so he could not blame anyone else. Throw this idiot out. Don't disturb everyone's drinking mood. After Chu Xiu gave the order, someone immediately carried the half-dead Gao family head away. Chu Xiu stretched out his hand, and the Ghost Hand King personally handed a white towel to Chu Xiu. Turning around, Chu Xiu wiped the blood on his hand and revealed a smile, saying, "Everyone, let's continue the conversation. Don't let the disturbance of an idiot spoil our mood." Picking up the wine cup, Chu Xiu said, "As I said, this cup of wine is to everyone." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu drank the wine in his cup. The others did the same. With the previous example, no one dared to not give face to Chu Xiu now. Then Chu Xiu continued, "This second cup of wine is to the Guanzhong torture room. Guanzhong is located between 3 countries. Everyone can look at the history. Throughout history, which place like this has not been extremely miserable, covered in the flames of war all day long? The Guanzhong torture room's contributions cannot go unnoticed for all of you to be able to live so comfortably now. Therefore, this second cup is to the Guanzhong torture room." Chu Xiu had spoken in such a dignified manner, so everyone did not say anything. They all drank a cup of wine in unison. Pouring the wine in front of them to the brim, Chu Xiu said, "As for the third cup, there's no hurry to drink it. It won't be too late to drink it after the discussion." Everyone present looked at each other. The main show had finally come. What exactly Chu Xiu wanted to do would be revealed now. Looking at the people present, Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "The Guanzhong area is connected to 3 countries. Although the punishment hall does not allow smuggling, I believe that everyone here has done it many times. You must have earned a lot, right?" The expressions of everyone present immediately changed. This was the unspoken rule of the Guanzhong area. In the Guanzhong area, which martial arts faction had done this kind of thing openly or secretly. The only difference was that some people did it more, and some people did it less. But no matter how many, it was somewhat inappropriate to say such things in broad daylight. Therefore, just as everyone wanted to say something, they were stopped by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Everyone, we are all on the same side now, so there is no need to be secretive. I, Chu Xiu, am different from the previous inspector, Feng Zhengyuan. I am actually very easy to talk to. Only by making things convenient for others can it be convenient for myself. In this world, power, fame, beauty, or wealth is what everyone strives for. It's not shameful to follow one's heart's desires and desires." The martial arts world in Guanzhong had never been orthodox, but it was not evil either. Now that Chu Xiu had said it so openly, they were still not used to it. Chu Xiu continued, "Right now, all the smuggling businesses in Jianzhou Prefecture are controlled by you. So what you have is wealth. As the inspector of Jianzhou Prefecture, what I have is power. With the two combined, we will definitely be able to obtain more than what we have now. Therefore, this third cup of wine is a toast to the cooperation with all of you. After drinking this cup of wine, we will all be friends. We will get rich together, and we will focus on money together." Chu Xiu slammed the wine cup on the table and looked around at everyone present. Everyone's expression changed slightly, and they looked at each other. The Luo clan patriarch coughed and asked, "I wonder what kind of cooperation official Chu is talking about." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "It's very simple. Right now, in my opinion, your smuggling businesses are basically a mess. Everyone is doing their own thing, sneaking around, and there is no order to speak of. If we are to cooperate, we will have to replan our respective businesses. For example, the Luo clan will only deal in minerals, the Divine Feathers sect will deal in elixirs, and the Haiyan Hall will deal in weapons. Each party will control a business in order to avoid conflict with each other and directly monopolize it. They will lower the purchasing price and raise the selling price. As long as the other party wants to do business in Jianzhou Prefecture, they will have to follow the rules here. In this way, won't your profits increase?" As soon as he said this, everyone's eyes lit up. Smuggling could be done in such a way. Right now, the smuggling business in Jianzhou Prefecture was indeed as Chu Xiu had said. It was quite chaotic on the whole. Everyone was doing their own thing, and there were many conflicts between them. Why were the 12 martial arts factions not united? It was because there were many conflicts of interest between them, and they often fought or even killed each other to form a grudge. If they did as Chu Xiu said, everyone would work together and monopolize their own businesses. This could indeed prevent such a situation from happening, and this method would also have great benefits both internally and externally. Chapter 175. The secret smuggling business in Jianzhou was no different from other places in Guangzhou. It was a mess both internally and externally. If they worked together, they could lower the purchase price and then raise the selling price, just like Chu Xiu had said. At present, most of the caravans from the 3 countries in Guangzhou had rushed to Guangzhou and sold the contraband they carried to the local gangsters for them to hide. In this way, they could avoid being discovered by the people in the Guangzhou torture room. In the past, these smuggled contraband did not have a fixed price. The foreign merchants would quote a price, and the local martial arts forces would buy it. If the price was too low, the foreign merchants would just go to other forces. Similarly, these martial arts forces could also sell some smuggled contraband goods to other places after purchasing them. The price could not be too expensive, otherwise, people could just look for other aristocratic families. In any case, there were more than 10 martial arts forces in Jianzhou Prefecture. If they did as Chu Xiu said, they could lower the price to the extreme and raise it to the extreme. At that time, their income could really double. Of course, no matter if they lowered or raised it, it could not be too exaggerated. Otherwise, the foreign merchants were not idiots. At worst, they could just leave for a while and go to other prefectures to trade. At this time, everyone present was thinking about how many times their income could be multiplied if they did as Chu Xiu said. Only the Luo family's patriarch asked first, "Official Chu, we have seen the benefits you mentioned. What do you want from us by doing this?" Chu Xiu glanced at the Luo family's patriarch and said slowly, "I said now I have the power, and you have the money. What I want is naturally money. As a warrior, all kinds of cultivation resources are bought with money. Also, it's time for my brothers in the Jianzhou Prefecture's inspector to start eating. After you and I cooperate, I will send people into your families. They will not interfere with your business, only your income. From then on, 20% of your income will be mine." As soon as he said that, the crowd burst into an uproar. They looked at Chu Xiu as if they had seen a ghost. Previously, they had heard that Chu Xiu was extremely greedy when dealing with the Jiang clan. It could be said that he was an exorbitant person, asking for a tenth of the Jiang clan's assets. Now that they saw it, Chu Xiu's appetite was really big. This time he didn't ask for the family's assets, but directly asked for 20% of their business. The family property was given to them in a lump sum, but the 20% of the business income had to be exploited. How could they tolerate this? The Heavenly Feather Sect's Cheng Gongtai immediately stood up and said, "Official Chu, you want 20% of our business right off the bat. Why? Just based on that idea of yours. Isn't this a little too much?" Chu Xiu spun the wine glass in his hand and said faintly, "That idea was just a gift from me. The more money you guys earn, the more I'll earn. As for why I want 20% of your income, I've already made it very clear before. You guys have the money, but I have the power." As Chu Xiu raised his head and looked at Cheng Gongtai, a cold and gloomy aura blew over, causing Cheng Gongtai to shiver. "Don't forget what kind of place this is. There are some businesses that you can only do if I let you do it. If I don't let you do it, you won't even get a single copper coin." Everyone looked at Chu Xiu. It was only now that they had witnessed Chu Xiu's tyranny. On the surface, it was a cooperation between the two parties, with Chu Xiu taking 20% of the income. However, after hearing Chu Xiu's words, they finally understood that the so-called 20% of the income was simply a protection fee. If they handed over 20% of the income, they could openly carry out the smuggling business in the Jianzhou Prefecture and form a monopoly. Chu Xiu, the patrol inspector, would protect them. However, if they didn't hand over the income, the Jiang family's fate was already in front of everyone. They would be directly charged with a crime, and without any evidence, they would be directly destroyed. Chu Xiu looked at the people in front of him, raised the wine glass in his hand, and said faintly, "This glass of wine is a toast to all of you. Drink it, and our cooperation will be considered to have begun. You can choose for yourselves." Everyone present looked at each other, but no one raised their glasses. 20% of the income sounded simple, but it was like cutting off their own flesh. Who wouldn't feel the pain of cutting off their own flesh? Moreover, this piece of flesh would be cut off for a lifetime. Although the income described by Chu Xiu seemed to be very attractive, who would be willing to cut off their own flesh like this before seeing a certain amount of income. Moreover, although the destruction of the Jiang family last time had shocked them, now that more than a dozen of them were together, their power was not something that the Jiang family could compare to. Chu Xiu could annihilate the Jiang clan, but could he annihilate all of them? Most importantly, at present, if most of them agreed, even if the others felt the pain, they could only follow suit. However, now that everyone was silent, who would be the first to raise their glass in agreement? Wouldn't that be the idiot who took the initiative to cut off their own flesh? Therefore, until now no one spoke. After a long while, Chu Xiu put down his glass and said faintly, "It seems that I, Chu Xiu, am still not respected enough. Even when I took the initiative to propose a toast, no one actually drank it. However, it doesn't matter. I believe that one day, everyone will drink this glass of wine. Everyone, you can leave now." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, everyone present immediately heaved a sigh of relief. They knew that with more than a dozen of them gathered together, Chu Xiu couldn't touch them, nor did he have the strength to do so. The group of people directly left after saying a few pleasantries. In an instant, the huge restaurant became a little empty. Seeing this, Du Guangzhong walked to Chu Xiu's side and said with some hesitation, "My lord." Chu Xiu raised his hand and interrupted Du Guangzhong's words. He picked up his glass and drank the wine in it in one gulp. A cold light appeared in his eyes as he said, "Since you refuse a toast, you will drink a forfeit." Majesty was always more memorable than Shini's, and this was the case no matter where it was. Most people only learned to eat and not to be beaten. Only when they were beaten to the point of pain and fear would they learn. It was not that they were stupid, nor was it that they were greedy. It was human nature. In this martial world, there were always very few people who could really see themselves clearly. "Old Du, I heard that someone in these forces said bad things about me?" Chu Xiu suddenly asked. Du Guangzhong nodded and said, "Yes, someone said that they slandered you and did not have good intentions this time. They wanted to contact the martial world forces in the Jianzhou prefecture to boycott you. The one who said it was the sect master of the Divine Feathers sect, Soaring Feather Falcon Cheng Gongtai, and the hall master of the Black Cliff Hall, Horizontal Refined Golden Body Do Weihu. My informant found out from the Luo clan's subordinates. It's definitely true." Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said to Du Guangzhong, "Go tell Qin Fang and Lu Qingli to gather their trusted subordinates. Remember, as long as they are elite trusted subordinates, the weakest must be an innate." Turning his head, Chu Xiu said to Ghost Hand King, "Ghost Hand King, the same for your people. Gather all of them and be ready to wait for orders." After joining the Guanzhong torture room, Ghost Hand King and the others did not have a specific scope of authority. They could only follow by Chu Xiu's side and wait for orders. Moreover, the person in charge of them was also Ghost Hand King. Yen Bugui was not good at managing these things, while Tangya found it troublesome and did not care about these small powers. Therefore, these things were still managed by Ghost Hand King. Anyway, he was not weak. Most importantly, he was the most prestigious among the assassins from the Blue Dragon Society. He was just the right person to handle this kind of thing. Du Guangzhong thought of something, and his expression changed slightly, while Ghost Hand King naturally nodded in agreement. He had done this kind of thing many times in the Blue Dragon Society. Ghost Hand King was already used to it. In fact, if they were strong enough, Ghost Hand King would have killed all of them. In his opinion, they were just a bunch of shameless people. After these martial arts forces left, Chu Xiu's elite subordinates gathered. There were close to 100 martial artists above the innate realm. This number could not be compared to any martial arts force in the Jianzhou prefecture. Let's do it. Take a stroll around the Divine Feathers sect, and let some people know that it is necessary to control their mouths. After Chu Xiu gave the order, his subordinates immediately started moving. They secretly concealed their tracks and headed towards the mountain gate, where the Divine Feathers sect was located. When Chu Xiu made his move, Cheng Gongtai, the sect master of the Divine Feathers sect, had already returned to the sect. He had never been interested in Chu Xiu's overbearing way of doing things. This time, when he heard Chu Xiu say that he wanted 20% of their profits, he was the first to stand up and refute. Moreover, There was one thing that he did not say about Chu Xiu's conditions. He could see through Chu Xiu's ambition from Chu Xiu. He had sent people to the sects to supervise their accounts and control their financial lifelines. It would be fine if it was only for a short period of time. However, if it was too long, Chu Xiu would really become the emperor of all the sects in the Jianzhou prefecture. This was something that Chen Gongtai absolutely could not tolerate. He did not know if others had seen through Chu Xiu's wild ambition, but he had seen through it. Chen Gongtai was also prepared to tell the other sects about Chu Xiu's wild ambition, and let all the martial arts forces in the Jianzhou prefecture unite to resist Chu Xiu. At the same time, they could also cooperate with him. Although Chu Xiu had revealed his wild ambition this time, the idea he proposed was really good. In the past, the martial arts forces in the Jianzhou prefecture not only fought on their own, but also had friction with each other. If they really united as Chu Xiu suggested, each monopolizing a business, lowering the purchase price and raising the selling price, the income of the sects would definitely increase beyond their imagination. Without Chu Xiu, their business could still continue. Why did they have to make an emperor of their own? With this thought, Chen Gongtai revealed a proud smile on his face. He immediately prepared to let his disciples inform the other sects to come to the Divine Feathers sect for a discussion. However, at this moment, a disciple hurriedly pushed the door open and said in panic, "Master! Bad news! The people from the Jianzhou Prefecture's Inspector Hall have surrounded our mountain gate." Chapter 176. Outside the mountain gate of the Divine Feathers sect. Hundreds of elite warriors under Chu Xiu surrounded the mountain gate. The Divine Feathers sect wasn't located in the city, but on a small mountain with verdant hills and limpid waters. Chu Xiu had inquired about the Divine Feathers sect from Du Guangzhong. It was one of the most common small sects in the underworld. In the beginning, the founder of the Divine Feathers sect was just a rogue warrior. He found a place to live in seclusion because he was tired of fighting in the underworld. However, he wasn't willing to leave his knowledge behind, so he taught some disciples. After these disciples learned their skills and wandered the world, they carried forward their knowledge and taught it to more people. As a result, a sect was gradually formed. Compared to the aristocratic families, there were obviously more small sects like this. However, such small sects weren't as closely related to each other as the aristocratic families. Therefore, the possibility of them being destroyed was higher than the aristocratic families. At this moment, in front of the mountain gate of the Divine Feathers sect, Chu Xiu's face was expressionless. This was just a stepping stone for him. What else could he feel? After a while, the mountain gate of the Divine Feathers sect was opened. Chen Gongtai walked out with a group of Divine Feathers sect disciples with a gloomy expression. He shouted, "Chu Xiu, what do you mean by this? Just because I didn't agree to your conditions at the banquet, you're forcing me to agree now? Aren't you a little too overbearing? Are there any rules in the Guangzhong torture room? Or do you think that the martial arts forces of the Jianzhou prefecture are pushovers?" Chu Xiu looked up at Chen Gongtai and smiled. However, he didn't give Chen Gongtai any explanation. He just spat out a word coldly, "Kill." Chen Gongtai was the chicken that would be killed no matter what he said or did. Since that was the case, why would Chu Xiu waste so much time talking to him? He could just kill him directly. As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, the martialists of the patrol hall swarmed forward and charged at the Divine Feathers sect disciples, who were still in a daze. At this time, Chen Gongtai was so angry that he wanted to curse. This Chu Xiu was going to take things to the extreme. He didn't even give him a chance to speak. Obviously, the other party had already made up his mind to kill them. However, Chen Gongtai couldn't understand what Chu Xiu was thinking. By annihilating his Divine Feathers sect, Chu Xiu would be enraged by the entire Jian province's martial arts community. Although the Jianzhou prefecture's martial arts forces all had their own agendas and could be said to be in a state of disunity, that was because they had yet to truly encounter a crisis. Chu Xiu killing people at this time was very sensitive. A force like the Luo family would definitely not choose to stand idly by. Before the knife was placed on the neck, the martial arts forces of Jianzhou prefecture would not make a move. They were all watching. However, with the annihilation of his Divine Feathers sect, it meant that the knife wasn't just placed on their necks. It had already begun to bleed. Therefore, no matter how Chen Gongtai thought about it, he couldn't figure out why Chu Xiu would make a move at this time. This was simply the action of a lunatic. Chu Xiu didn't make a move to annihilate the Divine Feathers sect. He only said to Tanya, "Tanya, you deal with this person." Tanya's lips curled into a lazy smile. Two small daggers with dragon engravings appeared in his hands as he slowly walked out. His weapon seemed to be constantly changing. Even Chu Xiu didn't know what weapon he was proficient in. The Divine Feathers sect's Chen Gongtai wasn't too strong. At least, that was what Chu Xiu thought. If he went all out, Chen Gongtai wouldn't be able to withstand more than a few moves. This time, Chu Xiu didn't ask Tanya to make a move because he was too lazy to do it. Instead, he wanted to give Tanya and the others a boost. He wanted to let Du Guangzhong and the others see the true strength of Tanya and the others, and see if they could stand on equal footing with them. This wasn't because Chu Xiu was deliberately biased towards Tanya and the others. This was just a process that newcomers had to go through when joining an organization. For example, when Chu Xiu had first joined the Blue Dragon Society, he had destroyed the Yu family and completed a level 5 mission alone. Only then did he gain the recognition of the other assassins of the Blue Dragon Society. Now this was why Chu Xiu asked Tanya to make a move. He wasn't as narrow-minded as the guilty branch leader. He didn't have many subordinates in the first place, so it was meaningless to let them waste their energy on this kind of internal strife. It was better to let them quickly see the strength of the other party, so that he could have a baseline and didn't have to test the waters. At this time, when Chen Gongtai saw that the person who made a move wasn't even Chu Xiu himself, he couldn't help but feel his blood boil. This time, Chu Xiu had personally led his men to destroy the Yu family. But in the end, Chu Xiu didn't make a move. Instead, he let one of his subordinates, a constable that he hadn't even seen before, fight him. What was the meaning of this? Was he saying that he didn't have the qualifications to fight him? Facing the murderous intent of exterminating his entire clan, and still being humiliated like this, Chen Gongtai's eyes turned red with anger. His figure flashed, and with a flash of white light, he leaped into the air, like a rainbow piercing through the sun. A small, slender sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed towards Tanya with a chilling aura. The Divine Feather sect's special skill was their movement technique, the Flying Feather 12 forms. This movement technique allowed the user to display extreme speed, especially in close combat. Some people didn't even see his figure before they were struck by his sword several times. His nickname was Fluttering Feather Falcon, which was a description of his agility and the lightning-fast momentum of an eagle. In the face of Chen Gongtai's sword, Tanya still had that slightly mocking smile on his face. His body suddenly moved when the sword was about to reach him. Like a swimming dragon, he easily slid behind Chen Gongtai. A sharp aura erupted from the two dragon-patterned daggers. Like a flurry of blades, he crazily slashed at Chen Gongtai. Chen Gongtai jumped in fright at this moment. He was a person who excelled in speed. He didn't expect to see someone faster than him today. Chen Gongtai flipped the sword in his hand and whistled down like an eagle soaring through the sky. Violent astral energy erupted, meeting Tanya's daggers. But he was shocked to find that the opponent's strength was actually greater than his, and he was forced to retreat. Both of them were experts in movement techniques, and their attacks were also extremely fast. So when they started fighting, Du Guangzhong and the others couldn't even see their movements clearly. The only thing they knew was that Tanya was currently suppressing Chen Gongtai. For an assassin of Tanya's level, he had killed more than 1 or 2 targets of Chen Gongtai's strength. He didn't feel the slightest pressure at all. Chen Gongtai was fast, but Tanya was even faster. His agility was like a swimming dragon, and his sneak attacks were like a ghost. He directly forced Chen Gongtai to the extreme. After a dozen moves, Chen Gongtai's body was already bleeding. Chen Gongtai gritted his teeth. He was still puzzled. When did the Jianzhou Prefecture's Inspector Hall have such a troublesome person? This speed was simply terrifying and strange to the extreme. Chen Gongtai roared angrily, and astral energy erupted from his body, temporarily forcing Tanya to retreat. At this time, the thin sword in his hand strangely broke into 7 pieces. It looked like a sword thrust, But in fact, it was like 7 flying daggers attached with incomparably sharp astral energy. They went straight for the vital acupoints of Tangya's body. This move could be said to be Chen Gongtai's trump card. It wasn't a legacy technique of his Divine Feathers sect, but a hidden weapon technique that he had accidentally obtained from a secret box in the past. It was called the 7-sword soul chasing. The body of the sword must be specially forged. At a critical moment, as long as a specific astral energy was used, the sword could be broken into 7 flying daggers and slashed at the opponent. This move was very useful in a sudden attack. After all, no one would have thought that a sword that was supposed to stab forward would turn into a hidden weapon halfway through. Chen Gongtai rarely used this move, but every time he used it, it meant that he was ready to kill. Looking at the 7 dagger-like broken sword stabbing towards him, Tangya's mouth could not help but reveal a mocking smile. The 2 dragon-patterned daggers in his hands disappeared, but as his hands danced, everyone could see wisps of golden light bursting out from his hands. No one present could see what the golden light was. Only Chu Xiu saw it clearly. It was the dragon tail soul-chasing dart that Tanya had been playing with. And it was 24 dragon tail soul-chasing dart. 24 dragon tail soul-chasing dart in an instant. As Tanya's hands danced, the 24 dragon tail soul-chasing dart directly turned into a large net with the support of astral energy, enveloping Chen Gongtai. In the blink of an eye, the 7 broken swords were blown away. No matter how fast Chen Gongtai's movement technique was, he couldn't escape from such a dense net of daggers. In an instant, everyone could only see a flower of blood blossoming in the net of daggers. There wasn't even a scream. The 24 dragon tail soul-chasing dart neatly formed a circle on the ground. And in the middle of the circle was a pile of minced meat that looked like it had been thrown into a meat grinder. Such a terrifying and bloody scene made the constables who came from the Guanzhong torture room turn pale. As constables, what they had seen the most was corpses, all kinds of corpses. But the scene before them could no longer be called corpses. It was simply a scene of dismembered corpses. Even Du Guangzhong and the others couldn't accept this scene. Looking at the pile of minced meat, Tanya spat out 2 words indifferently: trash. No one knew whether Tanya was referring to Chen Gongtai's strength as trash or the opponent's hidden weapon technique, which could only be achieved through sneak attacks, as trash. With a wave of his hand, astral energy swept out, and the dragon tail soul-chasing dart on the ground were put into Tanya's sleeve. No one knew if he had a secret space box, or if there was something else hidden in his wide sleeve. He walked back slowly. This time the constables looked at Tanya differently. There was even a hint of fear in their eyes as they involuntarily moved away. Chapter 177. Tanya's display of might was not bad. This also made Du Guangzhong and the others truly understand what Chu Xiu meant by having his subordinates compete fairly. If everyone was on the same starting point, they might not be able to compete with the assassins from the Blue Dragon Society. These people were simply born to kill. Chen Gongtai was dead, and the other cultivators from the Heavenly Feathers sect had either been killed or fled. They were no longer a threat. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "I heard that the Black Cliff Hall isn't far from here? That's good. Leave a portion of you to collect the assets of the Heavenly Feathers sect. The rest, follow me to the Black Cliff Hall." Chu Xiu had destroyed 2 sects in a single day. Du Guangzhong found it hard to accept his shocking speed. However, after seeing the killing methods of the cultivators from the Blue Dragon Society, Du Guangzhong couldn't help but shake his head. These people were really sharp. The cultivators from the Guanzhong torture room weren't weak either. There wasn't much of a difference in strength between those in the same realm. However, their combat strength was slightly weaker than their opponents, especially when it came to killing. More than half of the cultivators from the Heavenly Feathers sect had been killed by the assassins from the Blue Dragon Society. The Heavenly Feathers sect wasn't in the city, but the Black Cliff Hall was. The reason why Black Cliff City was called Black Cliff City was because it produced a type of stone that was as black as ink. After being polished, it was like a mirror and was a good material for building palaces. By the time Chu Xiu arrived at the Black Cliff Hall, Dou-Wei-Hu already knew that the Heavenly Feathers sect had been destroyed. There were so many disciples in the Heavenly Feathers sect But not all of them had the courage to face death calmly. Some of the cultivators had already fled when Chu Xiu made his move. Black Cliff City wasn't far from the Heavenly Feathers sect, so Do Weihu had already received the news. After receiving the news, Do Weihu's first reaction was to flee. Although Do Weihu looked like a boorish man, he was actually more calculative than anyone else. For example, at the Luo family's gathering, he kept saying that Chu Xiu was up to no good, and that he would never wait for him to attend the banquet. However, when the time came, he came earlier than anyone else. Seeing that things weren't looking good, Do Weihu's first thought was to escape. However, before he could escape, Chu Xiu had already annihilated the Divine Feathers sect. Without any hesitation, Chu Xiu went straight to Do Weihu's door and blocked him at the entrance of the hall. Seeing that he could not escape, Do Weihu immediately put on a flattering smile and brought his men out to welcome him. "Official Chu, I've thought it through. Your previous suggestion is definitely a good thing for the martial arts community in Jianzhou Prefecture. I don't know if others will agree to it, but from now on my Black Boulder Hall will definitely follow Official Chu's lead." Of course, a person like Do Weihu could not speak the truth. Right now, all he wanted was to survive under Chu Xiu's hands. As long as he had enough time, he could unite all the martial arts community forces in Jianzhou Prefecture together and oppose Chu Xiu. When the torture hall's headquarters were alerted, Chu Xiu would still be in for a beating. Looking at Do Weihu, Chu Xiu's lips curled into a strange smile. It seemed to be mocking and disdainful at the same time. "Do Weihu, do you think there's any point in playing these little tricks? You refused to drink when I offered you a toast. Now go down and drink the guillotine wine." Chu Xiu did not need to waste any effort to guess whether Do Weihu was telling the truth or not. In any case, he was only here today to kill. Do Weihu's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly said, "Official Chu, wait. Wait. Listen to me." However, at this time, Chu Xiu did not seem to hear him at all. He only said to the person behind him, "Broken sword, I'll leave this person to you." Yan Bugui nodded and walked out expressionlessly. He took the heavy sword from behind his back. With a step, Yan Bugui's figure rushed out. All the gang energy in his body was concentrated on the sword, emitting a misty luster. However, he did not release it. The crowd could only hear the sound of the air exploding. The aura of Yan Bugui's sword was as if it could split a mountain. It was incomparably explosive. Do Weihu cursed in his heart. It seemed that this Chu Xiu really wanted to kill him. He had no way to block Yan Bugui's heavy and powerful sword. The aura that was like Mount Tai was coming at him. No matter how strong his physical body was, it was impossible for him to withstand this sword. Hence, gang energy erupted under Do Weihu's feet. He subconsciously wanted to escape. But right at this moment, the stellar energy on Yan Bugui's giant sword suddenly erupted. The grayish stellar energy was incomparably viscous, and it directly imprisoned Do Weihu's figure within it, causing his movements to come to an abrupt halt. Just this pause was enough for the sword to come smashing down. A sword could be used to slash or stab, but the heavy sword in Yan Bugui's hand was used to smash. The heavy sword had no edge. It was a skillful sword. The huge sword came smashing down like a heavy hammer. Do Weihu's expression suddenly changed. Since he could not dodge it, he could only take it head-on. Do Weihu formed a fist seal in front of him. He did not have a weapon because he mainly cultivated his physical body. His fists were his strongest weapons. A pale golden gang energy suddenly exploded and crashed onto the body of Yan Bugui's sword. However, it did not cause any effect. It was like a clay ox entering the sea. Do Weihu's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of fear. However, in the next moment, he was directly sent flying by Yan Bugui's sword. In an instant, both his arms were broken and his golden body was shattered. Blood blossomed in midair. Seeing this scene, Chu Xiu could not help but shake his head. Letting Yan Bugui make a move was too much of a bully. Facing Do Weihu, Yan Bugui could completely suppress him. Although Do Weihu had only made one move, Chu Xiu could see that his opponent's horizontal golden body was indeed very strong in terms of physical cultivation. Excluding the gang energy, just in terms of the defense of the weapon, it was second only to Chu Xiu's De Guyin. It must be known that Chu Xiu's Dugain was one of the fast and slow 9-words formulas. It consumed a huge amount of qi and could not be maintained for a long period of time. However, Do Weihu's horizontal golden body could be used at any time. He did not need a weapon because his physical body was comparable to a precious weapon. It was a pity that his opponent was Yan Bugui. Yan Bugui's huge sword was also a precious weapon. However, his huge sword was only superior in terms of weight and material. It did not have any special powers. It did not even have a sharp edge. It completely relied on brute force to smash people. Under such a powerful force, even if his body was really made of iron, he would still be smashed into pieces. Moreover, his horizontal golden body had not reached its peak yet. His internal organs were still fragile flesh and blood. Yan Bugui's face was expressionless as he wielded his sword. His sword stance was extremely simple, but when combined with his strange internal force, it allowed him to unleash his strength to the extreme. His opponent could only face it head-on, and not even have the chance to dodge. With both arms crippled, Do Weihu struggled to escape. In the end, he could not escape from Yan Bugui's heavy sword. After a few moves, he was smashed into a pile of minced meat by Yan Bugui's sword. With Tangya as an example, although the faces of the people present were still a little pale, they had somewhat adapted to the situation. Especially the people of the Blue Dragon Society. Almost all of them had the experience of carrying out missions with Yan Bugui. They knew that as long as Yan Bugui made a move, there was an 80 to 90% chance that his opponent would be smashed into mincemeat. At this moment, with Do Weihu dead, the remaining members of the Black Rock Hall no longer had any thoughts of resisting. They were either killed or fled. As usual, Chu Xiu ordered his men to gather some cultivation resources and valuables from the Black Rock Hall. At this moment, Du Guangzhong walked over with a worried expression and said, "My lord, our current situation is not very optimistic. We have destroyed 2 clans in a row. I reckon that the news has already spread. It is already too late for us to destroy a 3rd clan." Chu Xiu asked in reply, "Who said that I want to destroy a 3rd clan?" Du Guangzhong was stunned. "If we don't continue to attack, won't we be in trouble when the sects of the Jian Province Prefecture join forces?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "It's just killing the chicken to warn the monkey. If we kill all the chickens, what will we eat? You stay here and continue to deal with it. I will bring a few people to the Luo clan." Du Guangzhong nodded his head in confusion. Until now, he still did not understand what Chu Xiu was trying to do. The Jian Province Prefecture was not big, but it was not small either. One day was enough for the news to spread all over the Jian Province Prefecture. In fact, Chu Xiu had only used half a day to destroy the Heavenly Feathers sect and the Black Rock Hall. However, it was enough for the news to spread to more than half of the Jian Province Prefecture. At this moment in the Luo clan, the Luo clan patriarch was dumbfounded when he heard the news from the clan disciples. Back in the Phoenix Pavilion, the Jian Province Prefecture patriarch had humiliated Chu Xiu. None of them had agreed to Chu Xiu's conditions. Based on the Luo clan patriarch's analysis of Chu Xiu's character, this matter would definitely not end so easily. However, the Luo clan patriarch had never imagined that Chu Xiu would act so crazily. Out of control. This is simply lawless. Other than these 4 words, the Luo clan patriarch could not think of any other words to describe Chu Xiu. There were rules in the Guanzhong torture room. However, Chu Xiu had completely disregarded the rules. Was he not afraid of blowing things up and bringing it to the main hall? In the past, Wei Jiuduan had openly covered up for Chu Xiu to destroy the Jiang clan. This was something that all the martial artists in the Jian Province Prefecture knew. However, that was just the Jiang clan. With Wei Jiuduan's authority, he could easily suppress it. However, if Chu Xiu forced the entire Jian Province Prefecture to rebel, even Wei Jiuduan would not be able to suppress it. At this moment, the Luo clan disciple suddenly knocked on the door and entered. "Patriarch, Chu Xiu has brought people here." The Luo clan patriarch glared at the disciple and exuded a cold aura. What exactly is Chu Xiu trying to do? Not only did he destroy the Heavenly Feathers sect and the Black Rock Hall, he also wants to destroy my Luo clan? Does he really think that the martial artists in the Jian Province Prefecture are all soft persimmons that he can bully at will? The disciple had a strange expression. Patriarch, this Chu Xiu does not seem to be here to make a move. He only brought 3 people with him, and did not make a move directly. They are still waiting in the meeting hall. Chapter 178. Hearing that Chu Xiu had only brought 3 people with him, the Luo family's patriarch was a little surprised. Just a few people wouldn't be enough to wipe out the Luo family. What was Chu Xiu's intention in coming here? When the Luo family's patriarch arrived at the meeting hall, he saw Chu Xiu still leisurely sipping his tea. The Luo family's patriarch couldn't help but say coldly, "Official Chu, you sure are ruthless. My Jianzhou prefecture's forces didn't agree to your conditions, so you wiped them out. You're so overbearing and lawless. Do you still have any respect for the Guanzhong torture room's rules?" Chu Xiu said indifferently. "Old Master Luo, you've been in Guanzhong for so many years. Don't you know what the Guanzhong torture room's rules are? Only things that benefit the Guanzhong torture room will be handled according to the Guanzhong torture room's rules. What I'm doing now doesn't harm the Guanzhong torture room's interests. Also, Old Master Luo, there's one thing you said that's very true. I, Chu Xiu, am lawless. In the Jianzhou prefecture, my words are the law, the heavens." The Luo family's patriarch was so angry that he laughed. "Arrogant. Chu Xiu. Do you really think that no one can deal with you? Today you wiped out the Heavenly Feathers sect in Blackcliff Hall. You've already placed a knife on the necks of the Jianzhou prefecture's forces. You can wipe out 1 or 2 forces, but can you wipe out more than 10 of us?" Chu Xiu looked at the Luo family's patriarch and said coldly, "Old Master Luo, you should know why I chose the Heavenly Feathers sect in Blackcliff Hall. Those 2 idiots didn't watch their mouths and slandered me, Chu Xiu, in public. Others might not know, but do you think you don't?" The Luo family's patriarch's heart skipped a beat when he heard Chu Xiu's words. Their conversation that day had probably spread. At the same time, he was cursing in his heart. After this incident, he would definitely get rid of those disciples and servants in the family, and make them watch their mouths. Those patriarchs and sect masters who had participated in the meeting would not be so idiotic as to spread the news of their conversation. The only people who could have leaked the news were the servants of the Luo clan. Chu Xiu leaned back in his chair and said indifferently, "Actually, I'm a very tolerant person sometimes. Even if that Cheng Gongtai and Do Wei who spoke ill of me behind my back, I didn't flare up in the restaurant, right? I gave them a chance, and we could have become friends and partners. Unfortunately, they didn't cherish this opportunity. They refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, so don't blame me for being ruthless." The Luo clan's ancestor stared straight at Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Then why have you come to my Luo clan? What are you trying to do?" Chu Xiu stood up and met the Luo clan's ancestor's gaze. He said, "Old Master Luo, you should know what I'm trying to do. I've already said it very clearly in the Phoenix Cry restaurant. If everyone cooperates, it will be a win-win situation. Unfortunately, you all rejected me at that time. Old Master Luo, you are a smart person and know how to choose. Although the Luo clan's strength in the Jianzhou prefecture is not the strongest, it can be ranked 2nd or 3rd. As long as the Luo clan agrees to my conditions first, the other forces will not reject, nor will they dare to reject. Previously, I divided the Jianzhou prefecture's business into 12 portions. Now 10 portions is enough. In return for a plum, I can give the Divine Feather sect and Do Wei Hu's portion to the Luo clan." After a moment of silence, the Luo clan's ancestor said in a deep voice, "Good plan. Destroy the Divine Feather sect and the Haiyan Hall, and make an example out of them. Then the Luo clan will take the lead and agree to your plan. The martial arts forces in Jianzhou prefecture are not united to begin with, and this time, they have directly collapsed. I don't think there will be many who will dare to resist you. Even if there are, they won't be able to do much. However, if the Luo clan is the first to agree to your conditions, then the Luo clan's reputation in Jianzhou prefecture will plummet, and the other martial arts forces will despise the Luo clan for being treacherous." Chu Xiu shrugged and said, "You have to give as much as you want. Compared to the benefits that the Luo clan will receive, a mere infamy is nothing." The Luo clan's ancestor took a step forward, narrowed his eyes and said, "What if I don't agree?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "If you don't agree, then I will go to the water avoidance sword sect and the Xiong clan of Huaqing. These two forces also have experts at the three-flower realm at one's prominence, and they are not weaker than the Luo clan. Old man Luo, you can resist the temptation of these benefits, but can you guarantee that the water avoidance sword sect and the Xiong clan won't? The result will be the same. I don't care who is the first to agree to my conditions. As long as I have this person, that's enough." The Luo clan's ancestor wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't say it. He only sighed because he couldn't guarantee that the other two forces would not agree to Chu Xiu's conditions. Having been in Jianzhou Prefecture for so many years, he had long understood what the other martial arts forces were like. They were scattered sand, each with their own agendas. If they could really put aside all their scheming and work together, then they would have been able to threaten Chu Xiu back at the Phoenix Tower. He would rather betray others than let others betray him. The Luo clan's ancestor gritted his teeth and said, "All right, I agree to official Chu's conditions." The benefits were right in front of him. Instead of letting others take them, he might as well take them himself. As for the fact that the entire martial arts world of Jianzhou Prefecture was completely alienated because of him, the Luo clan's ancestor couldn't care less. The Luo clan's ancestor's principle all his life was to keep a low profile and follow the trend. He would only be the third or fourth, never the first or second. As a result, he was old. Under the threat of Chu Xiu, he could only choose to be the first. At this time, the Luo clan's ancestors' feelings were a little complicated. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Old man Luo, when the business in Jianzhou Prefecture starts in the future, you will find that your choice today was not wrong. You will feel lucky for this." The Luo clan's ancestor smiled bitterly and said, "I hope so." Chu Xiu directly stood up and said, "In this case, I will trouble you to inform the other martial arts forces in Jianzhou Prefecture. 3 days later, at noon, I will hold a banquet in Jianzhou Prefecture. Those who come this time will be considered to have agreed to my plan. At that time, everyone will discuss what business they are responsible for. As for those who don't come, forget it. Old man Luo, there is no need to say anything. They should have seen the consequences." After saying that, Chu Xiu directly turned around and left with his people, leaving only the Luo clan's ancestor in the hall with a melancholy look on his face. This time, he clearly understood Chu Xiu's character. He was domineering and cruel. He was as cunning as a fox, but he was also as fierce as a wolf. This kind of person was generally very common in the diabolism. God knew what the Guanzhong torture room was thinking. How could they bring such a person into the Guanzhong torture room? But now the Luo clan's ancestor was too lazy to think so much. He had already boarded the pirate ship, and it was too late to regret now. Several core disciples of the Luo clan walked in and said cautiously, "Ancestor, what should we do now? Do we really agree to Chu Xiu's conditions?" The Luo clan's ancestor snorted coldly and said, "What should we do? Of course it's nothing. If we don't agree, the other aristocratic families will have to. What do you think we can do?" The Luo clan's ancestor suddenly thought of something. He asked the disciple, "How is the Gao clan now?" The Gao clan's ancestor was asking about was the only one who came late to the Phoenix house last time. In the end, Chu Xiu attacked him and threw him out in the end. The Luo clan's disciple was a little puzzled as to why the ancestor suddenly asked about the Gao clan, but he still said, "Last time, the Gao clan's master was seriously injured by Chu Xiu. His internal organs were directly injured. Although his life was saved, he has been disabled and is still unconscious. The Gao clan's master is in the prime of his life. He has not chosen the next master. As a result, the Gao clan is in a mess now. The disciples are fighting for power." The Luo clan's ancestor waved his hand and said, "Later, take some people and destroy the Gao clan." The Luo clan's disciple was stunned. "Ancestor, what did you say? Destroy the Gao clan? Why, we have no enmity with the Gao clan." The Gao clan's strength was not strong. It was at the bottom of the Jianzhou Prefecture's martial arts world. The Luo clan was at the top, so there was no enmity between them. If there had been enmity, the Gao clan would not have survived until now. But now, the Luo clan's ancestor said that he wanted to destroy the Gao clan. This was really confusing. The Luo clan's ancestor said faintly, "Remember, in the future, be respectful to official Chu. Even in secret, don't call him by his name." The Luo clan's choice this time is contrary to my usual style of doing things. Since this is the case, we might as well do it more ruthlessly. It's a good opportunity to give Lord Chu Xiu a gift. Since the Gao clan offended official Chu, and official Chu did not destroy the Gao clan, this matter will be done by the Luo clan. In any case, the Luo clan's first choice to cooperate with official Chu has already offended the Jianzhou Prefecture's martial arts world. We are not afraid of offending him even more. In fact, the Luo clan's ancestor did not say something. He destroyed the Gao clan not only to curry favor with Chu Xiu and give Chu Xiu a gift, but also because he suddenly thought about the distribution of the Phoenix Cry Pavilion's business in 3 days. The Luo clan was the first to rely on Chu Xiu. The Divine Feathers sect and the Black Cliff Hall's business would belong to them. If he destroyed the Gao clan now on one hand, he would curry favor with Chu Xiu. On the other hand, the Gao clan's share of the business would naturally belong to the Luo clan. Although the Luo clan had always been low-key, when it came to ruthlessness, it was not inferior to other martial arts world forces. As the Luo clan's actions spread, the other martial arts world forces in the Jianzhou Prefecture were completely dumbfounded. Previously, when the Divine Feathers sect and the Black Cliff Hall were destroyed, the martial arts world forces in the Jianzhou Prefecture only felt angry. They thought that Chu Xiu was too overbearing and arrogant, and that he did not care about the martial arts world forces in the Jianzhou Prefecture at all. In the end, before they could calm down, they heard that the Luo clan had agreed to Chu Xiu's conditions and had destroyed the Gao clan. This series of news made them unable to react. Chapter 179. The Luo family's betrayal enraged all the martial arts forces in the Jian Province Prefecture. In the eyes of the other martial arts forces in the Jian Province Prefecture, everyone had agreed to advance and retreat together. However, the Luo family had suddenly chosen to side with Chu Xiu. This was a betrayal, a blatant betrayal. In the end, the Luo family had even destroyed the Gao family. It was a change from the Luo family's low-key way of doing things. It was simply shocking. However, what happened after the incident? What could they do? Since the Luo family had chosen to cooperate with Chu Xiu, it proved that there were benefits to be gained. Everyone had a tendency to blindly follow orders. In the past, no one had dared to drink Chu Xiu's cup of wine in the Phoenix restaurant. If someone had taken the initiative to drink that cup of wine, the situation would have been completely different. Now that the Divine Feathers sect and the Haiyan Hall had been destroyed by Chu Xiu, everyone had also seen Chu Xiu's overbearing and ruthless methods. In addition, the Luo family had already chosen to cooperate with Chu Xiu. Was there any meaning for the others to struggle? In particular, those small sects that weren't considered strong on their own directly chose to join forces with Chu Xiu. 3 days later, in the Phoenix restaurant, the same location and the same banquet were being held. However, this time, everyone seemed to have made an appointment. They had arrived early and were waiting for Chu Xiu. Compared to the previous banquet, there were 3 people missing this time. Everyone knew that these 3 people would never appear here again. When it was close to noon, Chu Xiu walked into the Phoenix restaurant with his people. Everyone immediately stood up and bowed to Chu Xiu. "Greetings, official Chu." Seeing this, Du Guangzhong, who was following behind Chu Xiu, could not help but sigh in his heart. How long had it been since he had seen such a scene? In the past, when he was young, Guan Siyu had just taken control of the Guangzhong torture room. Her methods were decisive and sharp, causing the sects in the Guangzhong region to fear her. At that time, although the Guangzhong torture room was not as powerful as it was now, its might was at its peak. At that time, the inspectors would be called true inspectors. Once the inspectors found that a martial faction had done something that violated the laws of Guangzhong, there was no need for them to negotiate. They would directly punish them, and the more serious ones would be exterminated. Later on, people gradually slacked off, and the martial arts sects in the Guangzhong area also developed in peace. The status of the two sides changed, and they were on equal footing now. Even when it came to the previous inspector, Feng Zhengyuan, the sects of the Jianzhou prefecture brazenly looked down on him. The scene before their eyes represented that the Jianzhou prefecture's inspector hall had regained its dignity. At the very least, in the Jianzhou prefecture, Chu Xiu was like a local tyrant. No one dared to go against his orders. Looking at everyone present, Chu Xiu nodded and said, "All right, sit down." After everyone was seated, Chu Xiu poured another cup of wine, raised it, and said, "Since everyone is here, it means that everyone agrees with what I said before. Don't think that 20% of the profit is a lot. The benefits I can bring to everyone are definitely more than 20%. I will still say the same thing. After drinking this cup of wine, everyone will earn money together. I will not let anyone suffer a loss." This time, as Chu Xiu raised his cup, everyone present also raised their cups and drank the wine in their cups. As for whether the wine was fragrant or bitter, only they themselves knew. However, the feeling of being forced to drink was not a good one. Moreover, the problem was that they had no choice but to drink the wine. They had already seen the consequences of refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Currently, the Gao family, the Divine Feathers sect, and the Blackcliff Hall didn't even have the chance to drink. Therefore, a wise man submits to circumstances. After all, the Luo family was the first to agree. What was the point of them continuing to resist? After drinking the wine, Chu Xiu took out a booklet and said, "This is the name list of the businesses in the Jianzhou prefecture that I have researched. From now on, everyone will monopolize the businesses that they are responsible for. Don't touch what you shouldn't. If I find that someone is careless, then don't blame me for being impolite." Everyone present felt a chill in their hearts and nodded one after another. In the past, there was no problem no matter what they did. But now that they had agreed to the rules of the game set by Chu Xiu, they had to act according to Chu Xiu's rules. Only now did they realize that their relationship with Chu Xiu wasn't just a cooperation. It was basically a relationship of ruling and being ruled. The rules were set by Chu Xiu, and it was also Chu Xiu who would supervise the implementation. In this way, they naturally had to go against Chu Xiu. However, now that they had agreed to the matter and drunk the wine, there was no point in thinking about those messy things. Therefore, everyone present could only nod as they accepted their fate. Chu Xiu continued, "Next, I will talk about the businesses that you can monopolize. Among them, the Luo family is in charge of the medicinal herbs business, which are medicinal herbs and elixirs that have not been refined. Cultivators needed medicine when they were injured, and they also needed all kinds of elixirs for their daily cultivation. They also needed to refine all kinds of strange things. A large number of medicinal herbs and elixirs were the foundation. Therefore, this was a big business and could be said to be the most profitable business. However, no one was jealous. After all, the Luo family was the first to decide to rely on this official Chu. It was normal for him to receive such treatment. Chu Xiu continued, "From now on, the business of healing elixirs and formations will also belong to the Luo clan." As soon as they heard this, everyone present looked at the Luo family in a different light. No wonder the Luo family would choose to be the first to agree to Chu Xiu. It turned out that Chu Xiu had made such a promise to them. The shares of the Heavenly Feathers sect and the Blackrock Hall were actually given to the Luo family by Chu Xiu. Although healing elixirs weren't as popular as cultivation elixirs, their value was much higher than normal cultivation elixirs. The profits were also much higher. The same was true for the array business. Although there were fewer people selling and fewer people buying, the profits were just as high. There is also the hidden weapons and sounds business, which is also under the Luo family's control. Hearing this, everyone present understood that the hidden weapons and sounds business should belong to the Gao family. Because the Luo family had destroyed the Gao family, it could be considered as helping Chu Xiu vent his anger and pleasing Chu Xiu. Therefore, the Gao family's share also fell into the hands of the Luo family. Originally, each person was in charge of one category of business. Now the Luo family had one major category and 3 minor ones. This treatment was enough to make the people of the Luo family burst into laughter and make others jealous. This was especially true for the other 2 families, the Water Avoidance Sword Sect and the Xiang family, who had 3 Flower Realm warriors at once prominence. At this moment, they were also a little regretful. If they had known that they would choose to rely on Chu Xiu, they would have done so earlier. They could have even made more benefits. The Luo family had the upper hand, which was something that they could not be envious of. At this time, Chu Xiu announced the businesses under the Water Avoidance Sword Sect and the Xiang family's control. One was in the cultivation elixirs, while the other was in the weapons category. They were both major categories that were extremely profitable, so the people of the two sects were quite satisfied. Chu Xiu was very fair when he made these decisions. It was completely based on strength. If you are strong, I will give you the big business. Otherwise, you can focus on some of the smaller businesses. Otherwise, you won't be able to keep the big business. By the time Chu Xiu read to the end, they were basically businesses that were not very important. At this time, the head of a small family seemed to be a little dissatisfied. He couldn't help but stand up and say, "Official Chu, the Sun family." Before he could finish speaking, he saw Chu Xiu look over with a somewhat gloomy expression. He said, "What's wrong? Does the Sun family have a problem with my arrangements?" Looking at the silent people around him, the head of the Sun family could only swallow his saliva. He laughed awkwardly, sat back down and said, No problem." These large sects did not refute Chu Xiu's arrangements. If a small family dared to say anything, the Heavenly Feathers sect and the Blackrock Hall had already learned from their mistakes. Seeing this scene, the people of the Luo family also sighed. From now on, in the Jianzhou prefecture, no one could stop Chu Xiu's power. As long as he was still the inspector of the Jianzhou prefecture, the Jianzhou prefecture would have to respect him. Picking up his wine cup, Chu Xiu toasted everyone and said, "This cup of wine, I wish everyone a lot of wealth." "Thank you, Your Excellency." Everyone present raised their cups and responded in unison. After everyone received the plan, the entire Jianzhou prefecture began to move. Of course, this had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. He was only responsible for sending people to collect the money. According to Chu Xiu's instructions, each of the major martial arts factions monopolized one business. The merchants who came and went immediately noticed the difference. At first, when the prices of the goods they sold were lowered, these merchants were reluctant. However, after they went to several small cities, it was the same. Other than the faction that Chu Xiu designated, no one dared to buy their goods. In this way, these people could either go to other prefectures or sell to the people of the Jianzhou prefecture. However, the problem was that the contraband they carried was very dangerous. If they did not sell it quickly, it would be troublesome if they were caught by the Guangzhou torture room. Especially now that Chu Xiu was in cahoots with the local martial arts factions, he often sent out some Jianghu constables to investigate the smuggling. Although they did not really make a move, it was enough to scare these merchants into selling their goods at a low price. The same was true for the merchants who bought the goods. What they wanted to buy was only sold by the martial arts faction in the Jianzhou prefecture. The price was there, and if they did not want to buy it, they would have to go to other prefectures. In the beginning, the merchants who came and went were a little dissatisfied with this behavior, but later they found that it was quite convenient. As long as the seller came to the Jianzhou prefecture, found the right faction, and sent the goods to them, there would be no Jianghu constables to investigate at all. It was convenient and easy. Compared with the previous time when he had to go to each faction to negotiate the price, it saved a lot of time. The same was true for the merchants who bought the goods. After a few times, they would know what kind of business each faction was doing. When the time came, they could directly go to the faction to buy, saving time and effort. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.